Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today on World Health Day. You know, it's me, it's Coach Lynn. And oh my gosh, in these unprecedented times, hello, it's nice to see you. We're doing our best, all of us, the best we can to continue with our commitment to health and wellness, to ourselves, to our communities, and honestly, it is about life to the world at large. And our leaders and coordinators have been emailing and staying in touch and wanting to know how they can reach participants. And we so salute the leadership out there in all aspects of our program and life at large. So moving forward here now in this webinar, we want to talk about motivation and the cognitive side of it and how we can truly remain connected and tap into what we have within ourselves. I just want to notice, I want you to notice a giveaway to our Sport Med staff there that you can see. Jenny is our manager, of course, there she is. And Nick is our marketing specialist, taking care of the technical side of things. And that is Larry Birckhead, my dear friend and fellow runner, coordinator, and just Habit Shift founder, and just dear friend. I'm going to move forward here if I can. There we go. There's Larry, and you can see Larry on the screen. Those of you that are listening today, you do have an opportunity to ask questions. I think the best thing is right now, I believe your microphones are muted, and there is a bar across the top of your screen. You can play with your arrow up at the top or else at the bottom, and you'll see a chat box. And if you pull that up, you can ask questions as we go through the presentation, and then towards the end, we'll have time to, go through some of those questions. So thank you, Larry, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
How are you doing out there, everybody? I have to always just tap into what we do, and just hoping that at this stage you've found some kind of routine in your day-to-day life in this new norm that we have. We're on our own out there for the most part. When we are running, walking, we are staying at home. We are isolated but maintaining contacts with our friends through social media, just like we're doing here right now. We're doing our best to stay active with that physical distance concept. And I had to show my daughters, there they are on the left of the screen. I have a tiny little space in my veranda, and we've moved the furniture aside, and there they are, runners as they are. They run some days and are active doing gym work and body work inside in the veranda, remaining with that, in that isolation mode. And we're having fun with it. And I think that's really important, is to focus on what you can do in such a situation. We know this, okay? Exercise is medicine. I'm not sure why the thing is advancing quickly like that. We know this. I'm preaching, we're not preaching to the I am preaching to the converted here. We know that exercise does so much for ourselves, and arguably at this time, the most important thing is it boosts our immune system. And perhaps the most important side to this is the mental health side that makes us feel better when we exercise. And we know that. So the question has already come in through, sorry, I'm not sure why this is doing what it's doing, you guys. It's flashing forward for whatever reason. I'm going back to it. I'm just going to continue on and hope that I can stay with the slide I'm trying to talk to. Sorry, everybody. But this came in through Kathy Ford, Burnaby's Kathy Ford, and she's been a leader and coordinator with us since the beginning of the program. And look at what she has on there. She has put on our Sport Med BC Buffs nibs, all right? And of course, there's been all kinds of information on the news and on websites and so on, that we can keep each other safe by wearing masks and covering ourselves. We can't wear the medical masks. So what a great option to put that nibs on. And an idea came forward further by Rainey Kent there on the upper right-hand screen of the slide, that if you actually tuck a number 4 coffee filter inside the folds of your nibs, that you will be fully protected from spreading any kind of, you know, any kind of germs conducive to the virus. So the question though that I wanted to address that came in from Pam McDougall was, is it safe? Is it safe? And, you know, I'm no doctor. I'm going to say that right off the top. We know that. But we've all, you know, been listening, and I've Googled the earth on World Health Organizations and Mayo Clinics and so on. And what the evidence does suggest, and I know you've heard this, what the evidence does suggest is that this virus thrives and finds the respiratory system. Okay, that's your lungs, through your nose, through your mouth, in your throat, and into your lungs, the respiratory tissue. So the question was, well, does sweating, can we, you know, cause a spreading through sweating? And the answer is that no, because sweat is created in sweat glands, which has nothing to do with respiratory tissue. Okay, so that's not a worry. In terms of heavy breathing, Pam said, what about when we're heavy breathing? Well, if you're working out to a point where you are truly huffing and puffing and actually beyond where we want you to be in this program, then you generate saliva in your mouth. And by wearing a mask, the saliva is not going to come through the mask and go out anywhere. So we have to be careful in that regard. You need to dial it back. Spitting and, you know, the liquids that are generated in our mouth are dangerous. So the idea is that we boost our immune systems with moderation in activity. And that is what the Run Walk program is all about. And that's how we need to move when we're walking and when we're running. So what becomes apparent here too is the whole concept of physical distancing. And that's what's super important, that we're choosing routes and places where there are fewer people. We have wide roads, places where you can find that 2-meter space that we've, you know, been educated with over these last weeks and months. Okay, so it would seem so simple, and here you are already in week 12, and we've suggested that maybe it would be a good idea to find yourself entered on the You're Not Alone virtual 10K. So we know we're in week 12. You've been doing this for a long time, and if you haven't now, then you've joined in and you still want to be active and you want to find yourself in the program in the appropriate spot. So you have your program, you've decided on your days. These are things that we've been talking about since the program first began, okay? But then why? This is where we're getting to the meat of this webinar with our good friend Larry here. We struggle. I struggle. It's about life. How is it that when we know what to do, why is it that we find our way struggling at this time of adversity? And how do we find our way through that? And so Larry has some ideas that I want to toss around with him, and then maybe we can address a few questions you might have.
All right. So one of the things that I was just reading this morning is that if there was lack of cohesion around the world to deal with a single issue, then there certainly is a higher level of cohesion now around the world, because we're all sharing the same challenges in many, many ways. And of course, some much, much greater than others and some less than us. But in any case, the question for all of us is, what capacity do we have? And it's a good question to be asking right now. What's the capacity each of us has for successfully managing what we're going through? And it may not be a question you've asked yourself before, but certainly the issue of having the resilience really is what the word, I guess is another concept here, is it's what's our level of resilience, and how do we consciously, with intention, enhance our resilience, enhance our capacity for dealing with these things. I've heard the phrase, maybe some of you have, I've heard the phrase, a gift of desperation. And I love that, applying that to this situation, because Lynn was asking what constitutes motivation? Well, the simplest definition I can give you of what constitutes motivation is when the potential impact of a certain action or a certain condition gets close enough, it becomes a bother. When it's distant, when it feels far away, like, when a pandemic felt like something just theoretical, we weren't too worried about it, and we didn't prepare ourselves for that. But now that it's right upon us, we do have to worry about how close it is and how near it is, and what are we going to do about it. And so the issue of resilience and capacity to manage that kind of threat, or to deal with that kind of threat, becomes pertinent. The question then is, how do we increase this capacity? And that's what I'm going to tell you what some people do here in a minute. There are ways that you can increase your capacity. And so the data I'm going to show you is not based upon some theoretical laboratory experiment. It's actually based upon thousands of interviews of people who seem to demonstrate a resilience in the face of adversity.
So, Larry, is it the motivation comes from the sense of urgency that we feel? Because we want it, right? We want to tap into it. Is that
Exactly.
what we're saying?
But it has to be, it's always a competitive urgency. Like, I was talking to my doctor the other day, and he says, if I have a cup of coffee in the morning, I can't sleep at night. Why do I continue having a cup of coffee? Well, there's an urgency to have a cup of coffee. There's an urgency to get a good night's sleep. But so there's all these competing urges and competing distractions. And what we do is, for any explanation of 1,000 explanations, we end up picking the distraction or the potential or the possible action that we think will give us the greatest benefit or help us reduce pain to the greatest extent in the moment. So motivation is all in the moment. Right.
And we're talking about exercise and run, walk, but it's just so much larger than that in such the situation that we're in.
So here are the things that people do that seem to respond well and remain resilient in the face of adversity. Now, I'll remind you that these slides will be available to you. So if you want to take notes, that's fine, but these will be available to you after the presentation. So it's focusing on core beliefs is the mnemonic that you can use to remember this. C stands for control. Do you believe, and I'm asking this question not so much for you to answer right now, but I'm asking you to ask yourselves, do you believe that you can influence outcomes? When Lynn says this is about life, this question absolutely applies to all of the circumstances, but it becomes particularly pertinent when we're facing the conditions that we have now. Do you believe right now, today, that you can influence outcomes in your life? Well, you'd probably answer, it depends what the outcome is. I can't cure the virus. I can't stop the spread of it throughout the population or around the world. So I'm reminded of the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to tell the difference. We're all parsing out these kinds of things. Where can I have influence? Where can I not have influence? Even better, where can I actually exert control? And where can I only have influence? And where can I have no impact whatsoever?
Larry,
of course,
I read a quote, I shared this with you yesterday, and it comes to mind again now, is just that, do we believe we can influence outcomes? And the quote was, believe you can, and if you don't, fake it, because it's going to make a difference. Believe in it.
Yeah, so do it even if you don't believe that you can, and you'll find, generally speaking, what you'll find is you can influence things. Now, we are still in control of many, many things. There's nothing that's stopping you from keeping your house sanitary. There's nothing that's stopping you from eating well. There's nothing that stops you from God, how many times now are we going to see people doing marathons on their back deck? I think there's a mental issue there myself, but I'm telling you, I'd walk away from that with a twitch.
There are worse things.
26 miles on your back deck.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, my neighbors would probably complain. Anyhow, it's really, really important to understand that to remain resilient, you have to be able to parse out and get gratification from that which you can control, and know when you can't, and having the capacity to let go of the things you can't control, having the capacity to influence the things you can influence, and then definitely taking out all the things that you have total control over, even in these circumstances. I remember being really inspired by a book called Man's Search for Meaning. What was his name? I can't remember his name now, but he was in a concentration camp in World War II, and he said, "You can't take my mind from me. You can't take my sense of humor." And so the human capacity for resilience is just astounding, and this is where it begins to show up. I'm just asking each of you on this webinar to think of what that capacity is in yourselves. Second issue, ownership. This deals with, do you take it upon yourself to improve the situation regardless of who caused it? So I used to use this before applying it to this situation, the virus situation, when I would use this in companies that I would work for. All of us, I think, love to work with others who say, screw it, I don't care how it happened. I don't care that maybe they're to blame. It doesn't make any difference. As John Kabat-Zinn said, wherever you go, there you are. So here we are, we're stuck with it. Are we gonna try and blame others? Are we gonna try and wish that information had been more accurate or more timely? Yeah. We can, all that might be true. There's no discounting what mistakes may have been made. However, here you are. So now what? And some people, Lynn and I talked about this in preparation for this discussion. Do you find in general that you stay ahead of the curve, or would you prefer being the victim of events that surround you? And there are some people who set up lifestyles of victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who, they come by that honestly too. They were victimized as children, they were victimized as adults. But other than those sorts of situations, and just in general, all of us differ in our capacity to feel like we can make improvements regardless of the situation, regardless of the cause, regardless of who caused it. Do we have the mental strength to say, well, now what? Am I going to sit and wait, or am I going to be proactive? And that's what this one talks about. Anything on that one, Lynn?
Oh, I feel motivated when I hear you speak, because I love cognitively how you put words to what I feel and what we want to share. And I know our leaders and coordinators are thinking out there and rallying as to, we all need to rally and support one another in this regard. And control, do we believe we can influence outcome? Yes. The answer is yes. Let's say yes. Ownership, can we improve the situation regardless of this cause? Yes. Okay. Reach. Okay, now what?
So the deal here is, and this one I struggle with, this is the hardest one of these four elements for me, is how far do you let adversity in one area of your life bleed into other areas of your life? So if something goes wrong here, do you take it out there? This is the old, if things go bad at work, you come home and kick the dog routine.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also a form of critical thinking. All of our lives aren't one event. They aren't one emotion. They aren't one thought or one feeling. We compartmentalize. And I don't mean that negatively, pejoratively at all. I'm just saying is that we have different parts of our lives, and I play a little music, and I meditate, and I work out, and I work, and I shop, and I vacuum, and all those things I do. And if for me, my Achilles heel is if I have technical problems on my computer. I have to really struggle to contain the frustration I feel with my computer from bleeding into my attitude in other areas of my life. And so it's being able to understand and compartmentalize that the cause of my dissatisfaction from this reason doesn't have anything to do with my relationship over here, what I might want to do here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being able to keep them separate and being able to develop the skill. This is what resilient people do. They compartmentalize those kinds of problems. And so if I get angry at my computer and I turn around and I answer a question angrily to someone who's absolutely uninvolved in any of that, then I haven't done a good job. I've let that problem reach out into other areas of my life, which is a mistake. And it begins to take everything down, right? So that's what that one's all about. And finally, endurance, and this is the one that's talked a lot about by people in the press. If you're watching the news, almost every news cycle has something about saying, it's going to get better, we're going to get through this, this too shall pass. Now, that we don't want to denigrate the notion of the pain and sickness and discomfort and even death that some families are going to experience from this. So we don't want to say this lightly, because for some people it won't disappear for a long time. The pain, the hurt, the loss will be around for a while. But for the condition itself, for how you're feeling now, for how the conditions are in the world right now, this too shall pass. And so people that are resilient say, okay, the next month, next week, next 6 months, it's going to be a challenge, but it will be over at some point. I mean, some people even talking 18 months because when the vaccine is done, right? But
Well, we do know, I mean, this adversity, of course, it's very, very stressful. And in support of movement and being active, we know that to find a way to, let those endorphins release, we do have a stress release. And that, oh my gosh, we've all experienced how certain situations, unrelated to one another cause, behaviors that don't make sense because they're not related. But we know that the details of the day are better handled if we've found a way to be active and found a way to find some balance within what's going on. And how long this will last, I know we've talked about this too in leader training and in workshops. And Larry, when you've addressed our leaders in your habit shift workshop where people are, deciding to embark on this journey to begin with, and you've taught us to what we know to be true really, but to bring it back to center and take small steps, lose those distractions, try to put the distractions aside and focus on what you can do and what you can focus on and make it small enough to be successful. Larry?
Yeah, that's really, really important. It has to be small things. I'll bet you the last 5 books that come out about habit change in the last few years have all been about chunking a project into small increments, and that certainly applies to this situation. What's going to be your family's overall response to this situation? And it's a matter of parsing it out into pieces and saying, what are we going to do about that one? What are we going to do about that one? What are we going to do about that one? And just getting the mental framework around this protection mechanism we want to put in place, this envelope that we want to remain in order to be safe. And so I think that sorting through everything and then finding the frame of mind that's going to work for your lifestyle and work for your family is really. I saw a piece that really made a lot of sense to me the other day. I was telling Lynn about it. Is that a Canadian submariner? He said, here's how we deal with being in confined spaces for long periods of time. And he said routines. Of course, I remember on Saturday mornings, my mother would sit all of us kids down, and we had a routine on Saturday morning, and it was a chalk talk in our kitchen. And my mom would give my older sister these jobs and me these jobs and my little sister these jobs. And, I never entered the military, but because I had already been through it on Saturday mornings in my own family. But it's that sense of routine that this person was saying. And that just made a tremendous amount of sense to me, because a routine fits into all these things in the core.
There's no substitute for the power of positive thinking. And Larry, we do have that power. And you talked about now routines. Guess what? There we are. Has to do with that control, does it not? That you talked about?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So figuring out what that routine is. And we talked about this, Larry, a little bit. Maybe what did you mean when we were
right,
talking?
right. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's fair to say that simple escape can be so such a nice sense of release right now. I mean, um, we don't always have to be productive here. It's just I've been watching more movies recently than I have in the past. Silly movies. I watched Forrest Gump last night, and I'm gone. I'm just away. And of course, when Forrest Gump comes back, everything's still there. But I just got away for a little bit and gave my brain a release. By escape, I don't necessarily mean, you know, through a bottle, but or other forms of unhealthy escape. Running can be an escape. Putting on music when you run, that's a tremendous escape. So I think that's an important thing for people to remember, especially us recovering perfectionists. We don't always have to be productive.
And in our world now too, it's so dangerous on Netflix though. Like you can watch a 5-season, you could dive in and not do anything for a month. Be careful with that. Escape.
Yeah, in measured quantities.
Right. Yeah. But we've seen these, you know this to be true too when you're listening. You can find ways to move every day now using Google, using YouTube. I've discovered, 30 days of yoga with Adriene, and I love it and I'm committed to it alongside my running. So find your passion, find something that resonates for you, I think. And Larry, you talked about healthy food and meal. Actually, you mentioned that yesterday too.
Right. The person that was recommending routine, he said start with meals. Set meals at a particular time every day and ask that everybody in the house attends. And it's a way of centering. It's a way of checking in. And eating is something that has culturally been so important for getting families together. And he was saying at least do meals, same time every day. Set up the routine.
I appreciate that. We're working on it. And of course, we're connecting. We can do this, and we need to stay at home even more and connect virtually, not traveling to one another's homes. We know this to be true. We talked about the movies. Learning something new is a good idea. Find something that you don't know about that you're interested in and find a way to spend some time doing that. That's for those of us that maybe aren't working as much as we were. There's no such thing as boredom, right, Larry? Boredom. How does boredom fit into this?
I do not know. I do not get how people are bored at home. There's so much to do, so much.
What about that virtual 10K? Jenny, how are we doing with that out there?
I think we have about 70 participants signed up so far. So let's get more on there.
Well done, but come on, gang.
Sunrun numbers on there.
We should. Think about it. You can, do it anywhere. You can use Map My Route or Strava, or even just, drive an approximate route. And I love that we're gathered in one space. If you haven't done this yet, check out, it's motivating. I found myself motivated. Check out the site that Jenny's provided in the newsletters and just look at it and you'll go, oh, wow, I can do this. And then we're connected once again, and we realize, our 10K goal. You can even do a 5K if it's, more where you're at right now, or a 2K for that matter. They're all there anywhere, anytime, and it just is a gathering place for us all. So we did appeal to coordinators and leaders this past week just to, oh my gosh, appreciate what you've done and do and continue to do, and stay motivated with being in touch with your participants, because it's not just now. It's not just because we're in week 12 of the program. This is about life, and it's about moving forward, and it's about continuing with options for staying active. And that's what we're doing here, is trying to support the balance and, you know, just finding that routine, as Larry has talked about, that includes, you know, the exercise and the running and walking, or at least movement. I wonder, monitors there, are we seeing any chat questions at this stage, or is everybody pretty quiet out there?
May I say one last thing, Lynn?
Oh yes, we're not saying bye yet, no.
Of the 4 elements of the core of the strategies for dealing, for increasing resilience and dealing with adversity, I think participants, I doubt any of you are dealing with this, but I think a lot of participants are probably most challenged by ownership, where that's just my gut sense, is that people saying, regardless of the lack of the in-person clinics, regardless of the lack of somebody feeding me information about what I might do, this is a time for me to step up and make some decisions on my own behalf, and make some decisions around my own routine, about my own motivation. And if you give a message to anybody, to me, it would be that one. It would be, this is on you for self-motivation. We aren't there with you. We're there virtually, but I've been telling clinics all this year, when I was going to speak, I would say, I'm not a motivator. I'm not a demotivator, I hope, but I'm not a motivator. The motivation is on people to pick this up on their own. And that's what ownership is all about.
Thank you for that. And thank you for all of your wisdom and your anecdotes, and for all that you've shared, and for all that you've done for us all in the now and in the years that have gone past, Larry. So let's take ownership. Let's listen to Larry, everybody. We have the ability to take some control here. Focus on what we can do. Let's make a difference through what we do for ourselves and our families, and just know that you are making a difference in this, you know, terribly challenging time. And we're with you. Denny's with you, Nick's with you, Larry's always here, I'm here. We're not going anywhere in the next months, weeks and months. So thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to email any questions that you may have that we didn't address here, and we'd be happy to do our best to find information for you. Be kind. I just have noticed that it's really tough to feel humankind struggling. And so when we're out there, we can pass by one another 2 meters apart, but we can smile and we can say hi, and that goes a long way. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. Thanks again, Larry.
Lynn.
You're welcome. Bye-bye, everybody.
Sure, Jenny.
Did you see so Pam kind of just, she missed the beginning of the seminar, but she just was wondering if her question was addressed. And I think we mentioned
something was going on with my audio, and I could not hear anything that was going on, and I was freaking. So I had to reboot and finally got on. So I didn't hear about the problem that I'm starting to get looked at a little bit more suspiciously these days as I'm coming down a trail, and I give a wide berth, but I did wear my technical neck tube up over my nose and mouth. It seemed to make people look a little more comfortable, but I've been hearing on CBC people worrying about us deep breathing. So I'm sorry I missed that part.
I think that's what, I mean, you're doing what we were talking about.
Okay.
What we can do.
We did. We had a whole slide on your question, Pam, because
so
I think it's concerned for everybody. And I think in the end, just to reiterate, by taking the precautions that you've just mentioned, we are doing what we can. And as long as we're physical distancing and not exercising to, first of all, exhaustion, nor to where we're, you know, spewing out the mouth, which we aren't. We are keeping everything in moderation. No huffing and puffing allowed. We'll be okay.
Pam, one of the options, I don't know why nobody else has brought up, it just mystifies me why we haven't heard more about this, but not breathing while you're working out is also an option.
There you go. Yeah.
try that. I'm going to try
Yeah.
that.
That would be my
Don't,
last webinar, but okay.
don't inhale or exhale.
Thanks, Larry.
That ought to fix it. Well, that's why you have me here, to be helpful. I do my best.
Oh,
I
thank
am
you.
very grateful. You've been very motivating in the past, and it felt really important to tune in, especially at this time. And I agree with what Lynn is saying about it's not just about these 13 weeks. I mean, we're in week 12 now, but I'm not letting my participants go. I'm sorry, I'm not. So we have our Facebook page, but I will be doing regular check-ins because I love that there's an opportunity for the 10K to half marathon. And I don't care where people are on that spectrum, from the couch to the half marathon. I want to keep them going. And I'm thrilled that we have this virtual run, and I'm going to work to boost our numbers, I promise. But at this point, this feels too important to let go at the end of our clinic. So thank you for motivating me to reaffirm that that's what we really need to do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, gang, on that positive note, let's get out there in the world and do the best we can.
All right, thanks.
Best wishes, everybody.
All the best.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.